On New Year's Day, Russia launched a drone strike on Kyiv, killing 2 and injuring 6, while damaging buildings in 2 districts, including a residential building. President Zelensky confirmed Russia's actions, emphasising that even on New Year's Eve, Russia's focus was solely on harming Ukraine. In a related development, Russian gas exports through Soviet-era pipeline running across Ukraine were halted on New Year's Day. This marks the end of Moscow's decades-long dominance over Europe's energy markets. Gazprom, Russia's state-owned company, confirmed the stoppage at 5 GMT after Ukraine refused to renew the gas transit agreement. While this was widely anticipated, experts suggest that the suspension will not affect European Union gas prices, in contrast to the sharp price hikes experienced in 2022 when Russia's reduced gas supply triggered an energy crisis. First, we're going to be joined by our correspondent, Aditya Wadwan. Aditya, I'd like to bring back to the strikes themselves that we saw over the New Year's period. We know 2 people have died, 6 people have been injured. What else do you know?
Well, Josh, absolutely. As you rightly pointed out, Russia retaliated to the Ukrainian drone strikes that took place in the Russian city of Kazan. Russia launched a series of missiles and drones, and the first explosion was heard at around 3 a.m. in Kyiv, and the second explosion was heard around 8 a.m. in the morning. So, this seems to be an unending war. This war has been going on for quite some time now. Since 2022, this Russia-Ukraine war started, and there has been no stopping since then. On the other side, if you see, let's put this into perspective. Russian president, on one hand, the Russian president Vladimir Putin says that he is ready to make compromises on the Ukraine war on the position of strength and not on weakness. But on the other hand, on the other side, Russia is retaliating, is attacking Ukrainian cities again and again, and so this needs to be seen as to how this entire scenario is, going forward. It is not sure as of now that after Donald Trump takes office as the U.S. president on 20th January, whether this war will stop or not. So this needs to be seen, George. As you mentioned, the resulting of this, what has happened is that the Ukraine has stopped the flow, the gas supply to the European. This will majorly impact Russia's position as a monopoly energy supplier to the Europe. So this needs to be seen. Yes, George, back to you in the studios.
Thank you, Aditya. I'm going to bring it back to the gas flow, and I'm going to go to Gilbert Doctorow, a Russian affairs expert who joins us now. Gilbert Doctorow, in terms of the impact that this could have on Russia, we've seen, of course, that Zelensky has hailed it as a defeat for Moscow, but what will the impact be felt in Russia, and what could be the financial impacts?
Well, the impact on Russia is likely to be negligible. To put a dollar sign next to this action, Russia has been supplying $6.5 billion per year in gas via the Ukrainian pipelines. That will now be zero. At the same time, Ukraine will lose its transit fees, which have been $1 billion per year. So both sides will be taking a cut. But I think the Ukrainian economy is vastly weaker than the Russian economy. The Russian economy, just to give you an example, Russia has imposed on itself a deprivation of export sales for its military equipment, for its all of its tanks and artillery and whatever else that is purchased by India, by many countries around the world. And because this equipment is needed for Russia's continuing the military action in Ukraine. Russia has
Sorry, Gilbert, to interrupt. I want to bring it back, though, to the impact that has been there on Russian businesses. We've seen, of course, that many Western companies have taken business away from Russia, even though some are still operating on a smaller scale. But there must be some impact on this. It can't be nothing. We're looking at many businesses that have stopped trading with Russia. Experts have said that Russia, in their current state, can't carry out a continued war for more than maybe 1 or 2 years at this rate. So there must be some impact. It can't be negligible.
Those same people who are saying what you just quoted expected that Russia would run out of artillery shells after a few months following the entry into the war in February. So those same people are not to be taken as experts. They are propagandists. As regards money, as I was saying, Russia has cut off $35 billion in its own military exports per year. So what difference will a $6.5 billion loss? And part of that is not a loss, because Russia will replace these pipeline sales by more LNG sales. The European Union imported more LNG from Russia in 2024 than in 2023. There are a lot of complications to this story, and a simple approach that Russia is a loser is just propaganda from Kiev.
Ambassador Suresh Goel, I'm going to come to you next because I really want to look at the impact that this is going to have on the rest of Europe. We saw when the war started, or when the war at least escalated past the 2014 Crimea annexation, we saw gas prices across the continent of Europe rise dramatically, and that is still being felt across Europe. But in terms of the financial impact, the EU is saying it's not going to have that big of an issue. So can you provide some more context potentially on that for us?
My own sense is that if you look at the overall performance of Russian economy ever since the war with Ukraine began, and also from the context of financial instruments to put pressure on any country, most often this pressure or the impact of any kind of financial pressures or the trade sanctions has the impact only as far as the country subject to these pressures allows it to take place. Let me explain what I mean. Iran, I'm just giving a context here really. The USA had thought that Iran, after all the trade sanctions, all the economic sanctions, or the gas on the oil trade, etc., would be subjugated after some time, and would actually submit to the USA demands on nuclear program. It didn't happen. They continued with the nuclear enrichment, uranium enrichment. Russia, with the beginning of the Ukraine war, there had been enormous pressure. And now there is no doubt that the Russian economy has been impacted, and it has been analyzed in the various articles, public domain, but not to the extent that the world thought it would happen. They have been able to continue with the war effort despite all the pressure, and there are buyers of oil as unanticipated before. So my own sense would be that there would be an impact, but who will suffer from this? Moldova has had to cut down on their own energy metrics, and they are suffering from heat, a lack of heat. Therefore, the countries which could be impacted by gas supply stoppage at this time, at this severe winter, would of course be also the countries who were actually buying gas earlier. Therefore, while the impact on Russia could be temporary, for a few months till they find alternative buyers, impact on the European economies and people would be far more, and that is my sense. Josh.
Thank you very much, and we will continue to bring you the latest updates from across the Russia-Ukraine war and any further developments that we have across the EU with the continuation of the fuel crisis.